These are the men and machines who punch their clocks on playing fields of dirt, mud, and destruction. The very best in the business. They're the All-Stars featured each week on the National Network's Trucks and Tractor Power. In the high horsepower arenas of monster truck racing, mud bogging, and truck and tractor pulling, these men and women push themselves and their equipment to the limits in these ultimate tests of speed and strength. Their racing philosophy is simple: shake, battle, and roll. The only difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. That old adage certainly has a ring of truth in the sport of monster truck racing. Youngsters are fascinated with the monster machines. As for the men who pilot the real things, well, you might say they never gave up playing with trucks. But one thing's for certain: once that light goes green, they're playing for keeps. And that's when we separate the men from the boys. One guy who has certainly proved he can play with the big boys is Wadesboro, North Carolina's Gary Porter. The Carolina Crusher was always poised to climb the ladder of success in monster truck racing. A driven competitor, this proud member of the Chevy fleet had no problem making horsepower. But by stepping up in the suspension department, the Carolina Crusher was now able to combine the speed and agility to win races. And win Gary did, sometimes in explosive fashion. By capturing the 1991 MTRA Championship, Gary had gone to the upper rungs of this sport. But for the most part, Porter plays this game alone. Besides being owner and driver, he also does most of the work on the truck himself. And keeping the Carolina Crusher together during the season can almost be as tough as the racing. But rough rides are something this privateer knows all about. Because when the path to the finish line is covered with old Buicks and Chryslers, no one's expecting a free ride. contrast to that politeness, next we feature a brand of competition for those whose racing appetite is a bit on the sloppier side. Mud racing is definitely an acquired taste. And one of the key ingredients in this volatile mixture of speed and slime is nitrous oxide. This highly combustible gas is outlawed in most forms of racing, but in mud bogging, instant horsepower is created by just hitting a button. In a sport where the racing fire is fueled by laughing gas, you learn to scoff at danger. And that's especially true when you add the element of thrilling side-by-side competition to this potent mixture. It doubles the action.
Well, the dual pass gives the spectators a lot more to watch for, but it's a lot more dangerous for us drivers, and especially in the slicks shutdown areas. But that's just part of the game.
And while some drivers may not get too excited over all of this, mud racing's open, unlimited class is one of the most thrilling spectacles in all of motorsports. It's a no-holds-barred, free-for-all, a fan's delight for those with a sweet tooth for speed and an appetite for destruction. And for a real taste of this sport, let's go south of the Mason-Dixon line for some Southern fried mud racing. The outlaw image of Southern racing is perhaps best captured in some of the top names in mud racing from the South. JoJo Kenzer, the self-proclaimed bad agent of this sport. His black 89 Corvette with a 610 cubic inch Chevy power plant has garnered this native of Woodstock, Georgia, a reputation for being one of the wildest winners in the game. And he's no ordinary Joe in the Pro Stock division either. JoJo's black Chevy bad influence has left its mark in this class. Jeremy Finley out of Boone's Mill, Virginia had to clean up the name of his ride for television. So he took away a little fiberglass and his vehicle became the S-Kicker. Since then, a couple of letters is about the only thing this red Ford Coupe has lost. From Port Orange, Florida, Garland Walls in the 1990 nitrous-injected Chevy Blazer. He calls it the Gambler, and that's how we characterize his driving style. Sometimes you've got to know when to hold them. And know when to fold them. McDonough, Georgia's cigar-chomping Glenn Seabold, the 1991 Open Class champion in legal speed. The veteran Seabold has campaigned several cars on the mud circuit, but whatever the vehicle, you can always count on two Seabold trademarks. One, his ever-present stogie, and two, a blown and alcohol-injected motor supplying the power. The feisty father and son team out of Grovetown, Georgia, Enos and Mike Thomas. Dad Enos in the heartbeat of America, a Corvette with a 615 cubic inch nitrous-injected Sonny's power plant. It's made Enos's heart skip a beat on occasion. Son Mike Thomas also shares Dad's competitive spirit, and in the Chevy-powered Murphy's Law, whatever can happen will happen when Mike's behind the wheel. For years, Gary Osteen out of Daytona Beach, Florida, ran one of the wilder cars on the circuit, a 56 Thunderbird. Always popular with the fans, this fiberglass replica was just a little too heavy for Osteen to be competitive. But the feathers have come off the bird, and now Gary shows he can fly with the bad boys with his latest creation, the Dirty Bird, a 572 cubic inch Ford-powered rail. Orlando, Florida's Mike Atkins in his rear-engine dragster called Stinger. Mike has made the successful transition from the two-wheel drive class, and now it's the open unlimited that feel his bite. Panama City, Florida's Bucky Dillard and his Jeep Rattler. The name kind of says it all on this run. Another fine son of the South from the Sunshine State, Gene Whitaker, Lake Placid, Florida, in one of the heavier vehicles on the circuit, a 64 El Camino called Showtime. Watch Gene put on a show. Mount Sterling, Kentucky's Jeff Ballard in the Fort Brothers Express. 510 cubic inches of Chevy power lets this Model T with the underslung chassis bring home the bacon. And from Gulfport, Mississippi, Larry D. and Tony in the Team Power Pro Coupe. A 500 cubic inch Keith Black Hemi provides the juice, and Larry D. provides the thrills. Tampa's Tony Giannis in his 1931 Chevy Coupe Daydreamin'. But don't expect Giannis to be asleep at the wheel. And Jim Bodkins and his backyard-built Exciter out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This is what can happen when you have too much horsepower for home-built axles. And here's a look again at what happens when you simply have too much horsepower, period. Next, we focus on a guy who's no stranger to landing on his hat, Scott Stevens and King Crunch. Stevens and his Auto Value Special have garnered a reputation as the rough and tumble kid of monster truck racing. King Crunch may be a little hard to recognize from time to time, but Scott Stevens' driving style has made for some unforgettable moments, like this one at the Richmond International Raceway, where Rich Hooser and yours truly, Gary Lee, were on hand for the first of many King Crunches.
Oh, Scott's in trouble. He gets a little out of shape and he hits the wall. Bigfoot's going to take the win. I'm going to get down here and see if Scott's all right.
And here is a look again.
Gary, I'll show you what happened. When he got off that first set of cars, look how out of shape he is. Now, he's turning left into the cars, but once he's in the air, you have no control over that vehicle. And with that wall being as close as it is, it hooked that left front tire and just drug him around and totally busted the front housing.
Scott was done for the night in Richmond, but rest assured he'd be back to shake, battle, and roll another day, like this Sunday afternoon at the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds, where Stevens was definitely on a roll. Round 2 action versus Barefoot. Army Armstrong and I can tell you that this would be no Sunday drive for Scott Stevens.
Stevens jumped him on the light, Gary.
Oh, he got a good cut, but look at the air. Fred Schaefer way up in the air. Oh, a problem for Scott Stevens. He is upside down. That truck looks like it's really been hurt. We'll watch to see for Scott if Scott can climb out as the crew runs over there, the safety crew, his crew. They look in the cage. Look at the destruction to that Chevrolet.
Look at the air of the hang time Schaefer had on the left of your screen. Now he pulls back on Stevens. Stevens, bad
right there. Yeah, he catches that rut and rolls him on over. A lot of damage. Stevens was able to walk away without serious injury, but his string of bad luck would continue. Just a few weeks later, it was on to Canfield, Ohio. up against Snakebite. Watch what happens to King Crunch in the far lane. Another rollover. Scott would get it back together for the next day, where things only got worse. King Crunch in the far lane, minus the front doghouse, up against John Green and the Micro Machine. Here's the live call.
Whoa, he's
And
going
he's
over
upside
again.
down again. All the way over. Scott Stevens has to be saying, oh no, not again. The crew runs over there.
They're talking to
he's
him.
moving in the cockpit. He apparently is okay, but how many times can you roll one over before you finally throw up your hands and say, I think I've had enough of this? But as we've seen, there's no quit in this man who epitomizes what it takes to shake, battle, and roll. And after Scott cleared the cobwebs, he tried to put it all in perspective.
It seems like the thing that got us back to be competitive is probably what's hurting us a little bit right now. But, you know, we're still there, and it's a long season. You know, we're going to still come out of here in the top 5. We'll be happy, and we're not going to miss no points races. We're going to be at every one of them.
Scott Stevens and King Crunch on his hat one day and ready to race the next. Good safety equipment has kept this gutsy racer out of Woodlands, Texas from being seriously hurt. But it's his strong will to win that keeps King Crunch coming back for more. Because when his truck stays upright, it's one of the hardest chargers on the circuit. Another truck that's had its share of hard times is USA 1. Owner Everett Jasmer and driver Steve Wilkie have had to put Old Glory back together more than once. And one of the more damaging wrecks took place once again on that narrow straightaway of the Richmond International Raceway. USA 1 in the near lane versus Equalizer in the far lane. Driver Steve Wilkie was uninjured from this violent crash, but perhaps the fatigue factor was setting in on the Chevy Silverado that's been over on its roof one too many times. Watch how the truck careens to the left after the first set of cars and is about to T-bone the Equalizer just as USA 1 hits the stack of cars in the opposite lane and the front end tucks under. After Steve Wilkie collected his thoughts, he talked to Army Armstrong.
People don't realize how important it is for you to stay in the throttle. A lot of people think, well, wait a minute, if you just backed out of the throttle, everything will be okay. That's not the case at all. If you'd have backed out of the throttle, you'd have really been in trouble, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely, Army. When you land in any contorted position, meaning nose over, up on two wheels, bicycling the truck, anything like that, especially when you're nose over, you want to drive that front end out.
Just a few weeks later, Wilkie would let his right foot do the talking. USA 1 would dust itself off and go from the scrap heap to the winner's circle in Flemington, New Jersey. Now, that's one race Wilkie wouldn't mind seeing again. And here's a look at that and some other memorable moments for USA 1. They're both staged. There's the green light. The championship here in Flemington. It's USA 1. USA 1, Steve Wilkie takes the victory. Climb on the brakes. Look out, Steve. Through the car and through the fence. The Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson, is another driver who is tough on equipment. Anderson, in his 1950 Chevy panel wagon with that customized paint job, is one of the most popular attractions in the sport of monster truck racing. While the truck itself is a showstopper, it's the way Anderson drives that really gives the fans their money's worth, despite what he tells the folks back home.
I'm just trying to keep my cool. I'm in front of I got my whole family out here. I kind of worry my mom the way I drive. I promised to her tonight that I was going to drive like somebody with some sense, and it's working.
Don't believe it for one red second. Anderson may not always make it to the finals, but every time he pulls up to the starting line, you know the Gravedigger's going all out. If mud racing is an acquired taste, then tractor pulling is an all-out assault on the senses. A thick plume of black smoke gives the pro stocks their own unique calling card. While there's no mistaking the ear-splitting cry of 3 and 4 high-dollar race engines found in the modified division. In the smoker division, the same brand names that are mainstays in rural America take center stage. John Deere, International Harvester, and Case Magnum slug it out for the manufacturer's title. With the modified, the names that get top billing are the ones more associated with the sport of drag racing. Arias, Keith Black, Rodeck. Tractor pulling has its roots in the small-town atmosphere of farms and county fairs. But this horsepower hayride can also produce some big-time thrills. For the fans of monster truck racing, brand loyalty is more along the lines of Ford versus Chevy. One truck the Ford faithful love to cheer for is the Jersey Outlaw. Whether it's Mike Wine or truck owner Nick Rossi in the cockpit, piloting the Jersey Outlaw is definitely a ride in the hot seat. And the temperature can also get pretty high in the pits when it comes to keeping this Ford together week to week on the circuit.
Tell Mikey, give me an extension, 3/8 drive. Get 3-4 bolts on there, I don't care. You got training fluid?
For those who follow this racing team out of Pennsauken, New Jersey, they know this Outlaw is never too far from the action. But every now and then you've got to look close because sometimes the Jersey Outlaw operates under disguise. At the Indiana State Fairgrounds with Nick Rossi at the helm minus the sheet metal, it was actually nothing short of a miracle this truck was running at all following an incident the day before in qualifying. Watch this tough landing as the left front spindle digs in and completely flips the truck. Although Rossi was unhurt, the truck's body was totally demolished. But as we'll see, mishaps like these don't diminish the Outlaw's hard-charging spirit.
I throttled it a little bit too hard to want to shoot him. I'm too anxious to get in that motor and run it. So I got too close to the walls, I hit him, I throttled it and went up over top of him.
No problem. That may be the name of the truck John Moore drives, and judging from this pose, his attitude on life. Once he climbs in the cockpit of that yellow Ford Bronco, John Moore is all business. In the business of racing, the No Problem team is a family affair. John's wife Heidi is co-owner along with John. While she does everything from work on the truck to handle all the everyday business affairs, she's also his #1 fan. This short wheelbase spring leaf truck with the 460 cubic inches of Ford power is a fixture on the monster truck circuit. And while the No Problem team may still be searching for that winning formula, John and Heidi have never lost the secret for running hard and staying competitive. The Midwest, specifically St. Louis, is the birthplace of monster trucks. This nation's breadbasket has a proud racing heritage. It's, of course, home to the Indianapolis 500 and the U.S. Nationals. The men from the Midwest who compete in a sport that's sometimes described as drag racing at its dirtiest also share in this region's rich racing tradition. Powerful machines and slick driving skills characterize mud racing's Midwestern all-stars who sport several former champions and many members of the 2-second club, an elite fraternity for those mud racers who cracked the 3-second barrier. And at the top of the list is 1991 indoor and cut tire champion, holder of several track records from Frederickstown, Missouri, Ron Pence and Tater, a Chevy Love with 572 cubic inches of Keith Black power. One of the most exciting performers in the sport is another former champion and card-carrying member of the 2-second club, Tom Meents, out of Paxton, Illinois, in his 32 Ford Roadster, Shake Me. While this is the form that garnered Shake Me the 1989 NMRO Car of the Year title, Tom can still shake himself up on occasion. And at the Indiana State Fairgrounds, home of the famed Hoosier Mile and the Hoosier 100, a fitting place for two of the top cars in mud racing to go head-to-head in a side-by-side shootout. Tom Meents in the near lane, taking on Ron Pence in the far. And when the dust had cleared, Tom Meents and Shake Me had taken the win by just 10/100ths of a second over Ron Pence and Tater. Mishawaka, Indiana's Mike Fair, the 1989 cut tire champion, is also no stranger to close calls. His 23 Alter T, the time traveler, can also travel a little too close to the edge at times. Another bucketee, the 1990 Car of the Year, the Destroyer 3. Rick Keel holds several NMRO national records in this car and doesn't rely on nitrous for power. A big block blown engine by Jim Oddie out of New York creates a more subtle explosion off the starting line.
Well, we want something that makes a lot of power in the higher RPMs and that you can throttle and control the power more. And we found with the blower motors we can do that, and then we can also throttle the accelerator so that when we get ready to leave the line, it's just like pulling up a big rubber band, and when they let it go, it just keeps going and accelerating all the way through.
Vandalia, Ohio's Chad Miller and the Instant T, which sometimes spells trouble. But other times it stands for terrific. Also out of Vandalia, Ohio, Tom Marsh, who like his buddy Chad Miller, can also get into some precarious situations. Veteran Mike Erdely has one of the cleanest running cars in the sport. The Mud Shark is one of the most recognizable names in mud racing. This 64 Corvette funny car out of Buchanan, Michigan sports a 525 cubic inch Keith Black Hemi engine and is a perennial top 10 finisher. But even this shark can sometimes swim in troubled waters. But most of the time, the Mud Shark is on a feeding frenzy, and the price of victory doesn't come cheap.
We've got at least $100,000 in this car, and we do all the engine work, and we built the chassis, everything ourselves.
El Dorado, Illinois' Wes Newman and his Jeep Bunny car's need for speed can get him into trouble. And Tony Ferroti out of Canton, Michigan in his 27 Roadster Let's Boogie 2. Here, Tony demonstrates how a mud racer on the run makes bail. But that wasn't the last straw for Tony. He, like all good haymakers, come back to shake, battle, and roll another day. One of the first monsters to employ real racing suspension technology was a creation out of Springfield, Tennessee, the Equalizer. The Equalizer was the first monster truck to go with an all-coil, 4-link shock setup. This enabled the truck to eliminate a lot of the bounce coming off the cars and made the Equalizer one of the most feared machines in the sport. By capturing the 1989 championship, owner Gary Cook proved that this would be the wave of the future in monster truck racing. But the Equalizer was clearly at the head of the pack. And today, leading the charge is one of the bright young stars in monster truck racing, Greg Holbrook. What Holbrook lacked in experience, he more than makes up for with a quick hammer. And if a veteran gets the best of him once, rest assured, this youngster is more than capable of coming back to even the score. And Holbrook does it. Holbrook avenged the loss at Richmond. He predicted he would win it, and he does. Today, the blue and white GMC is still one of the most dominating top-end Chargers around. But the Equalizer has also had its share of bad breaks in this, the most brutal form of racing. While the Equalizer may resemble a lowrider monster here, the truck has certainly spent a lot more time riding high. These are the faces of Taurus. Jack Willman, Jack Willman Jr., Eldon Depew. Their battle cry is quite simple. Look out for the bull. At the end of the day, this is a familiar pose for the racing operation out of Granite City, Illinois. In the sport of monster truck racing, this is the complete package. At a cost of $70,000, Taurus combines the Chevy muscle to send the 5-ton truck airborne and the state-of-the-art chassis design to absorb the impact and hug the track. The Fox Racing shocks come from off-road racing, and they're a perfect fit for Taurus, whose brand of off-roading is riding over traffic. A mid-mounted engine makes for better balance, and a fiberglass body with lightweight chassis tubing also helps Taurus stay quick. These are the little tricks of the trade that crafty old drag racer Jack Willman Sr. has employed to build himself a winner. Because unless Taurus takes itself out of competition, this truck is usually flattening opponents. And here now is a look at why we're so bullish on Taurus. But rivaling the Bull is a Chevy monster that's always been a bear, Fred Schaefer's Barefoot. The first Chevy monster truck ever created still ranks #1 with the Bowtie Brigade. This long wheelbase, lightweight fiberglass truck with 572 cubic inches of Chevy might and a 3-speed Lenco transmission is quite literally loaded for bear. And even though this ride's 10 feet tall and weighs 10,000 pounds, Barefoot still leaves the line like a pro stock dragster, picking up the front end and banging it out the back door while also soaring some 20 feet in the air. It's runs like these that helped Fred capture the 1990 Indoor Championship. And over the years, Fred has certainly proved he's a racer for all seasons. This is horsepower, and this is one way to move a heavy load. Basically, it's what tractor pulling's all about, except two-wheel drives do it with a lot more flair. The variety of vehicles and the wheels-up action makes this tire-tapping motorsport an uplifting experience. But that sled sure can bring you down in a hurry. Here now is a look at the power of pulling in the two-wheel drive class. And next, from the mind of some demented truck lover, a machine that's been a bad dream ever since it entered the sport. Lurking behind a custom fiberglass body racing formula shrouded in secrecy, undoubtedly the wildest design on the monster truck circuit, snakebite. The chauffeur of this racing reptile is also masked in mystery. The Colt Cobra out of Copper Creek, Colorado, has made his message known. He's out to sink his venomous bite into every competitor. No one, nothing, not even inanimate objects are safe around this steely serpent.
Oh, here we go again.
Snakebite's in trouble through the hydrant barrier, and look at that! Is anybody in the building?
The storage building at the end of the track, Gary, he completely demolished it, literally ran through it. Look.
Luckily, no one was in the building, just this freezer and a lot of crushed popsicles and flattened frozen hamburger patties. Now watch again as Snakebite is about to devour the storage shed. But before his meal, the snake decides to get a little drink first.
I drove that Barefoot truck. I knew I was going to have to run hard and run fast. Kind of threw me off to one side there, and the back end sprung up on me. I was powering out of it, and I was kind of looking for the remote control guy to be killing me, and it never came around, and next thing I know, I was sitting in the barn down there.
Colt Cobra was obviously shaken, but not a lot of heavy damage was done to the truck or his racing resolve. Because from the moment one first laid eyes on this truck, the snake's stare lets you know one thing.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
And now, here's a look at the snake on the prowl.
Isn't this what you said to me on Friday?
If they get in my way, I'm going over them. I'm not letting nothing stand in my way. I'm going all the way to the top one way or another.
Like a snake will shed its skin, monster trucks change names, owners, and drivers. Nightlife was the candy apple creation of Dave Wyzorek out of Grand Island, Nebraska, who then sold the Chevy Stepside to Wayne Smozanik from Jupiter, Florida. The new man in the driver's seat gave the truck a more suitable name for its new base of operation, Tropical Thunder. But before the new paint job, there was this storm to weather at the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds, where it was lights out for nightlife, as Wayne Smozanik would tell Army Armstrong.
Well, as you can see behind us, Wayne Smozanik out of Florida took a ride on a wild side today. Wayne, what happened out there?
Army, we hit the second set of cars wide open. That's the only way you keep up with these guys. And what happened was, the best I can tell, I slung the power steering belts off and lost the steering. When I got back on the ground, the truck was up on its side, which normally wouldn't be a bad situation, but of course, without the assist of the hydraulic steering, you just can't muscle the truck around. And going that fast, once the one tire caught, it rolled right on over.
Watch again as Wayne's world is suddenly turned upside down, just when everything looked excellent. Mosanik would learn that in monster truck racing, you roll with the punches. And here now, we'll roll with the changes of Nightlife and Tropical Thunder. Trucks have certainly found themselves in all kinds of motorsports. Take, for instance, this tough truck competition, where vehicles just like the ones parked in your driveway compete in a variety of mechanical gymnastics. But when it comes to pushing the iron horse of the working man to the limit, Pulling's four-wheel drive class features what a pickup does best: haul things. But instead of moving furniture, they pull the weight of a three-bedroom house, nearly 40,000 pounds. In mud racing, the glamour cars and drivers are found out west, where the fastest gun is also the first lady of mud racing. Paula Harbuck of Utica, Oklahoma was the 1990 NMRO Cut Tire champion. Paula has proved this lady's place is behind the wheel of her 1990 Chevy S10 with the 453 cubic inch blow-in Rodeck. The name of the truck, Flirting with Disaster, and that sort of sums up what this sport of mud racing is all about. But more often than not, this lady's flirting with victory. Also along for the ride is Paula's husband, Jim Harbuck, who not only serves as her crew chief, but also competes in the paddle tire class.
Basically, she's nice to me. She lets me drive her truck.
Definitely a breed apart. That's the men and women of mud racing. And one of the top dogs is George Gregory out of Tyler, Texas, in the New Breed. The New Breed has set several national track records, and a 496 Yankee power plant has made George Gregory a member in good standing of the 2-Second Club. Crew Chief Rick Bale solidifies this team by taking an active role in virtually every aspect of the racing operation, because he knows there's only one thing he wants George Gregory thinking about:
driving, going out there and doing the best he can do and win. The rest of it, I would like him to let me worry about, because that's my job. He doesn't need to think about anything but winning.
And that strategy has helped the New Breed become a trendsetter in mud racing by capturing several indoor titles, as well as the NMRO's 1990 Open Class Championship. mud racing. It's good, clean fun, just like all forms of motorsports, except this brand of competition creates a much bigger splash. It's a test of strength in the mud. But the body styles are a lot more attractive in this game. In fact, the wide array of fiberglass found on these vehicles is one of the more interesting aspects of this sport. We've seen Jeeps, trucks, roadsters, dragsters, Corvettes, coupes, El Caminos, T-Birds, even a full-bodied 57 Chevy. And for a real boat, there's even this 1991 Starcraft. Greg Sharp out of Eminence, Kentucky, in his eminent wisdom, created this amphibious racing machine called the Mad Mud Demon. We're not exactly sure what possessed Greg. All we can say is, Greg, whatever floats your boat. Because the sailing isn't always smooth in mud racing. Just like the competitors, it's definitely a walk on the wild side. The pyrotechnics are also on display anytime two monsters stage, and you don't have to wait until dark to watch these fireworks fly, as we see here with Mike Botters in the Black Stallion. The campaigner out of Hagerstown, Maryland, gave us all quite a scare one Saturday afternoon at the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds. Botters was cruising to an easy victory, but he just didn't let up on the reins, and the next thing you know, he's put the stallion out to pasture. Mike would climb out of the cockpit with no serious injuries. That was another story as far as this black Ford was concerned. But before the stallion went back to the barn, Mike Botters spoke with Army Armstrong.
First of all, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Did you have any idea when the truck was going over or that it was going over?
Well, I felt the truck go to the right real hard, so I tried to correct my steering, and it just wouldn't come back.
Louisville Motor Speedway was the site of some more wild pony rides. The 40 Crush car sitting smack dab in the middle of the figure 8 track would present a pretty rough trail, as evidenced first by Thunder Chicken. Driver Kid Rarig has reason to squawk. Watch as he gets zapped in the cockpit on this landing, courtesy of those rocket ramps. And following that run, the driver of Star Monster, Chris Tumpley, would also see stars as the Chevy out of Syracuse, New York becomes a bucking Bronco. But the straw that breaks the camel's back, or in this case, one of the back tires of Bennett Clark's Clydesdale, would take place shortly after that. Watch as the pink Chevy in the near lane lands on the junk cars and completely snaps the entire housing on the right rear tire. This pony's ride on the rough terrain of the Louisville Motor Speedway would end up with the Clydesdale looking for a new hoof. And whoa, Kemosabe! This wasn't the only wild ride Jack Brady would take in his Jeep Cherokee at the Bloomsburg Fairgrounds. Earlier, the Pennsylvania native would nose his truck's front end in between the gap of cars, creating this wheel stand and causing the Kemosabe to break the rear steering. Steering clear of disaster, however, was Jesse Berge. Watch as playing for keeps in the near lane holds on for dear life in Bowling Green, Ohio. And now for a bad piece of driving. We head across the state to Canfield, Ohio, where Taurus has taken an easy victory, but his opponent, Goliath, demonstrates why you never turn your back on a monster truck. End over end. Not exactly the textbook way of making it over the cars. In one of those weird instances when going too slow may have caused the wreck, Tura, with not enough momentum to get over the cars, gets caught in the gap, causing his back end to buck him completely over. Tura would pick up the pieces of his broken luck and be back to race again another day. But for now, his world had been turned upside down, and when they righted this monster truck, it looked more like a junk car.
You have any idea what caused it to go over like that? It didn't look like the speed was there. I would never thought the truck would have gone over like that.
Well, I didn't quite have the speed, so what happened, I think I dropped the back tires in that little rut, and it like ricocheted me. It bucked me right over, and I didn't get on the throttle quick enough. And once I knew I was standing straight on end, all I did was just hold on. And I said, I'm going over. I said to myself, to just hold on for the ride.
But perhaps the wildest altercation ever seen in monster truck racing took place one 4th of July in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But before the fireworks, a word about the truck that would soon turn into a Roman candle. King Kong, the creation of Jeff Dane out of Killeen, Texas, with Steve Kane at the helm, had just made a dramatic turnaround in the sport. One of the original monster trucks was showing he could still play with the newer racing trucks. Coming off an impressive win in Bowling Green, Ohio, you had the feeling the old Ford had found new life. But as the sun was setting on the South Carolina coast, King Kong was about to go out in a blaze of glory, because what happened next was not only the most spectacular crash in the history of monster truck racing, but perhaps the fulfillment of a fantasy for anyone who's ever received a speeding ticket. Two unsuspecting police officers had parked their squad cars down at the end of the track when Steve Kane went for the ride of his life. Kane was able to climb out of the back of the truck unscathed, but definitely shaken as he talked to Army Armstrong.
When I come over that second set of cars, it got really squirrely on me, and it looked to me like I was going to hit that wall, so I was trying to compensate for it when I was, before I hit the ground, turn the wheel a little bit. And I think I turned the wheel just a little bit too much, and, when she hit the ground, that front end really hooked up, and
it looked to me like when you turn the wheel, the right front hit the ground, but at that time, the left front wheel was up on the rail. Is that what could have thrown you over this thing?
Yeah.
When you got the left wheel onto the rail, it looked like you're really in trouble.
Yeah, I think that's, I really don't know. Everything was happening so fast, I'd have to look at the video, but I'd say that'd be about right. That front tire hit that rail and everything.
We've been talking in the sport about how you drivers have to do something that's almost unnatural. That is, when you get in trouble, you have to gas the engine. That's exactly what you did. I cannot think of anything you could have done different to get out of that situation.
Well, I don't know. I seen that sign coming up, and all I was trying to do was get it turned back over on its wheels, but nothing worked,
Sadly, that would be the last roar for King Kong. So the next time you get a parking ticket, take a minute and remember this old Ford. Your citation is nothing compared to the accident report this police officer had to fill out. As we've just seen, monster truck racing lies somewhere between child's play and massive destruction. So as we leave you, here's a reminder of the kid in all of us. and a salute to those who never gave up playing with trucks.